everyone. It is a good idea for us to get started because this is only a 30-minute webinar and it's our inaugural Listen and Lunch AI Speakers Series. So welcome. As the name implies, this is an opportunity to hear from speakers in our community who are grappling with AI and AI strategies on their campuses. And also, as the name implies, it's totally fine to stay off camera, have your lunch. If you're like me on the West Coast, maybe it's brunch or mid-morning snack. But in any case, go ahead and stay off screen and just listen. But if you do have questions, which we encourage, please drop them in the chat. And if we have time at the end, we might also just take some live. So with that, I will, there we go. So today, however, you're going to hear from me. I'm going to provide a report out from a new working group in our organization called Campus-Wide Research Institutes. This group met recently and discussed AI and AI strategies. But before I continue, I want to remind everyone that this webinar, like all of our events, is guided by our code of conduct. You'll find a link to that code of conduct and an anonymous reporting form in the footer of our website, or you can also access it with this QR code. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Academic Data Science Alliance, or ADSA, as you'll hear me call it with our acronym, we are a community of data science leaders, practitioners, and educators who believe in a just and equitable future where data science approaches are thoughtfully applied in all domains for the benefit of all. And we run a bunch of events, workshops, we build resources. So if you want to learn more about our activities, you can check us out on our website, which is down at the bottom of this screen, academicdatascience.org. And you can also find that website with the QR code. Okay, so now just a bit of background about this working group. As I mentioned, this is a working group for campus-wide research institutes for data science. And these institutes support research and training across campus. But of course, they face many challenges, which is why we spun up this working group. Some of these include defining and revising their missions and strategic priorities, especially now in the changing landscape and the evolving technologies. We also build community and collaborate with super diverse stakeholders, communicating their value proposition to university leadership for more funding, which goes to the next bullet point, finding funding, and then also how to allocate the resources they do have, and finally, building sustainability. So if you are interested in learning more about this working group and potentially joining, I've pasted the URL for the landing page on this slide, and I recognize it's ridiculously long. Don't worry, you don't have to scribble it down. We will be sharing these slides with all registrants after the call. Okay, so that working group met for a one-day workshop recently, the one day before our ADSA annual meeting in the fall. And there we gathered 13 leaders of institutes from major research universities, and we discussed challenges, shared experiences of success, and planned to develop a report on value propositions for campus-wide institutes, which of course will be made publicly available. But we also talked about AI, and that is what I'm going to cover today. So we're going to talk today about the discussions that happened in that working group around the current state of AI strategies and the role of data science institutes in those strategies. And I want to first say that all of the insights, pearls of wisdom, useful content in this presentation is all that credit is due to the members of the working group. I am just the messenger. And if you hear something that you don't agree with or doesn't sound quite right, that could probably be because of me. So blame me, but credit to them. So let's get started. First, the bad news, which I think many of you know, which is that when we talk about AI strategy across campuses, it's a very hot topic first, right? Like everybody is talking it, presidents, chancellors, provosts, the word salad of university leadership are forming committees or task forces, and these are writing reports to address AI on their campuses. And some of those leaders are not even committing to an AI strategy. They're first saying, okay, what we really need is an AI framework. So they're kind of what I would say toe dipping, which is a little understandable because academia is a large beast that moves very slowly, and something as game changing and rapidly evolving it as AI is difficult to grapple with. So I understand the toe dipping, but it's a little problematic. And I would say because of uh, this, the committees and the discussions and the hesitation, there's a lack of clarity and a lot of chaos and confusion on campuses about what to do with this new technology and what strategies should be implemented. I will also say that attendees in this workshop were actually comforted by the discussion because they finally felt like they weren't the only one, that, you know, they're very happy that their campus is not the only one in chaos. It was a pretty unanimous feeling in the group. So when we began the conversation around AI strategy across a campus, we asked first, who is in charge? Who's in charge of the AI strategy? And the cheeky answer is no one actually is in charge, but 15 people believe they are in charge. The real answer is that there are very few examples of chief AI officers or chief data and AI officers at schools across the country. There are a few that exist, but it's pretty rare. And because of this, the leadership, now I'm saying university leadership, is leaning on those committees and task forces that I mentioned to tackle AI at various levels. And this can be everything from a committee that's responsible for everything to do with AI across campus, from research and education and operations, to committees and task forces that are much more specific to a domain, and maybe they're only talking about the implications for teaching or for research. Layered on top of this complexity is a systemic issue at universities with leadership turnover. High-level leadership turnover at a university is always a moment of transition and a bit of chaos, but in this current moment, that kind of turnover is especially problematic. Now, something that was really well received and a key point in our discussions that I will come back to many times is that AI strategy is not an endpoint, but it's the beginning of an AI implementation plan. And that's really important to remember in all this. So what is the role of a data science institute in developing AI strategy? One very insightful member of our group pointed out that there is no AI strategy without a data strategy. And no one in the group was at a university with a data strategy. So there again, that just adds complexity to the problem. Beyond that, AI, in terms of implementation and activities, is presented to these institutes as an unfunded mandate. However, it's very important for data science to have leadership in this landscape, in this discussion. So leadership is being in the room when AI is discussed, offering intellectual leadership and financial support for implementation, which is why I put a star here, because I said financial support right after unfunded mandate. It's critical that data science institutes are funded for the work they do in supporting AI and AI strategy on campuses. And the continuation of this as an unfunded mandate will really present a challenge and be problematic. Data science institutes are particularly good at being the bridge across campus and connecting faculty from many domains because they've already done this. So domain faculty from all different disciplines, they're comfortable going to data science institutes. They're used to it, they're familiar with it, but they're also the ones that may not know how to make use of available infrastructure with new technologies like AI. So another point that was discussed in this group is what should be considered in developing a general AI strategy. These are probably obvious, but I thought it was worthwhile to write them down. One is that strategy needs to be comprehensive and dynamic. And by dynamic, we mean adapt to this rapidly changing landscape of technology. It can't be something that's set in stone because it's just going to be outdated in a few years. That strategy should not just tell you what to do, but also what to say no to. And of course, should tell you, the people following the strategy, how to allocate resources. Ideally, the AI strategy helps you manage unrealistic expectations. AI comes with a lot of hype, and so there's a lot of confusion about what it can and can't do reasonably. Ideally, that AI strategy will also help manage some of that. The strategy should also consider who, how, and when for both developing the strategy and executing on it. And the who's and the when's and the how's will differ between those two. And so they need to be remembered and considered at the strategy stage. It gets back to data science institutes being the implementers. And this AI landscape is rapidly changing. We had a brief discussion about whether it makes sense that some university leadership is waiting for some stability before writing the strategy. And it was quickly a consensus that that is not going to work. This technology is moving quickly and it's dynamic and it's continue to move quickly for several years. And so writing a strategy now is critical to engaging with this technology now. Okay, so what about AI strategy considerations specifically for data science institutes? I've said this now, I think, a couple times, or alluded to it at least, that university leadership, they know implementation takes time, but they want to say their AI strategy is done, right? We wrote a strategy, we're done, everything's fine here, we've taken care of campus. But again, what I said earlier, the reality is that that strategy is just the beginning of implementation, and it will likely fall on data science institutes to be the implementers. So as that implementation is happening, and also as the strategy is being built, hopefully you're in the room, you're providing input, intellectual leadership, it's important to consider the alignment of the elements of that AI strategy with the mission and mandates of the institute. And those two things may need to evolve together. It's also important to consider, now I'm talking again specifically about data science research institutes, that there's both needed and slightly different or complementary uses of AI for general professional activities like grant writing, publication writing, and AI that's for scientific research, and both should be considered. Finally, AI readiness. So as many of you are, I'm sure, aware, the use of technology and data-driven research varies widely across campus. It's important to think about which of those disciplines are more AI ready and not, and what is needed. And all of this together is to say that as AI strategies being considered in the context of data science institutes, what we should be thinking about or what should be addressed are things like AI proficiency across campus, what interdisciplinary research can help support the evolution of AI in different research contexts, and importantly, the infrastructure for AI. And here I'm talking not just physical infrastructure like compute, but also intellectual infrastructure. Okay, so now I'm just going to touch on briefly a framework for an AI strategy. So I gave you some background and context around the discussions. Those discussions actually evolved into a, wait a minute, maybe we could do something while we're here as a group. So it was suggested that we could be doing a bottom-up approach to AI strategy led by academics, and that might be more effective than a top-down director from university leadership. And I want to say importantly here, we're talking about a framework and supporting the development of an AI strategy, not writing one. That's going to be dependent upon every school's independent context, right? But this is just an idea of having some kind of framework provided by data science leadership, faculty, and our community. So what might that framework look like? This is an overview of how we thought about this. We thought about AI and AI strategy in different contexts. So research, education, operations, workforce development. And this is importantly internal workforce to the university as well as external, and advocacy. And for each of these contexts, we wanted to consider, what are the strategic priorities? Why are you doing this? How will you do it? What's the implementation approach? Who needs to be involved? What's the collaboration strategy? And what will be the outputs in the end? How will you measure success? So again, for each context, we would consider all four of these. For the purposes of the discussion and time, and also because, again, these are data science research institutes, we dove particularly into this research context. So this is a very messy whiteboard that shows you our brainstorming. And as you can see, there's a lot here that we couldn't possibly, even with nice, pretty text, condense onto one slide, but I just wanted to give you an idea of how we were thinking about this and that we do have a lot of ideas. If we kind of mush some of those together, they're not perfect mushes, but collapse it so I can give you an example here of what this framework would look like, again, in the research context. Here I have in the different columns, the strategic priorities, the implementation, who should be involved, the collaboration, and the metrics of success. So if you just kind of read down, for example, AI proficiency across campus, I mentioned that as an important aspect and important goal in an AI strategy. Interdisciplinary research, authority, and here we're talking about authority of the Data Science Institute, both within campus and in the larger community. Community engagement is also important. Innovation and commercialization, and managing risks. And so for each of these priorities, there's ideas about how you could implement that. Again, I've removed a lot to squish it on the slide, but you kind of get the idea about, for proficiency, we would want some upskilling, and we might involve the libraries and data scientists and research software engineers. And our metrics could look at how many were trained, how many courses, that sort of thing. So you get the idea here. Oops. Okay, so that was just a very broad brush of what this working group has been talking about and some ideas that came out of those discussions. Where do we go from here? This working group is going to meet again after the holidays. So again, let us know if you would like to join. The URL for the landing page so you can see more about it was in one of the previous slides. And then I didn't provide my email address. Stella, maybe you could put that in the chat. You can email me if you're interested. And that working group has now pitched 2 deliverables. And so one is this AI strategy framework that I just talked about. And the second one is something I mentioned very in the beginning, but it is separate. And that is a value proposition for data science institutes. Either or both of these might be facilitated by an in-person workshop for consensus building and group writing. That's still TBD, but these are the kinds of things we're envisioning in the near future. Now, I didn't want to leave you just with like doom and gloom and abstract things sitting around waiting for committees to discuss. So I also pulled from our notes during that workshop and some other conversations I've had on recommendations for actions now. So these are the low-hanging fruits. What can an institute do right now while committees are talking about campus-wide approaches? The first example comes from University of Michigan Midas, again, ridiculously long URL, which you will have access to in the slides. But what they did was created and circulated user guides for AI for the campus. So if you navigate to that URL, you'll see what I mean, and that is something that any institute could do for their campus. Another thing that's fairly easy is organize a seminar series to present use cases for applications of AI in research. That would encourage other researchers in a similar discipline or working with similar data to go, oh, okay, I see how I could use AI here. Run a cross-university workshop or a summit to try to get consensus on AI needs. One of the members of that workshop pitched and was successful at standing up an AI council on their campus. And this was a council with representation from all colleges across campus, but every college just gets 1 seat, right? So there's some parity. And the idea here is not for the council to own AI or own AI strategy, but just to share, right? Coordinate what's going on in each of the colleges. Another idea is to co-host either with your Office of CIO, your IT, or libraries, an AI literacy event to help train faculty. And if you want a really deep dive, we had a suggestion of developing a certificate program, and these could be made possible with AI teaching fellowships to support the classes and the learning. Okay, so I whipped through that. I think we have 10 minutes for questions, which is great. I wanted to make sure that we had the time. So I'm gonna maybe stop sharing. And let's see.
I do have a question. Hi, I'm Patty Jones from Illinois.
Yes.
Has anybody checked out fairlytrained.org? I've just seen the website. It looks good. It's like, we will certify that your data can be used by AI systems because it has been like it has our seal of approval, and I
Oh,
like this concept, but
I
I've
haven't. Can you
actually
drop
done
that?
anything with it.
And then, oh, you did drop it in the chat. No, I am not familiar with that. Does anybody here raise your hand? We're a small enough group. I think we'd see a hand if anybody's familiar with that. I will definitely check that out. I'm not familiar with them.
Thanks.
Okay, I see there was a comment from Nathan. Yeah, the distinction between general professional activities for AI and scientific research is a huge one. It's definitely significant, and there is a large gulf. But I think just in the interest of being inclusive and that data science institutes really represent the breadth of opportunities for data and data discovery on campus, that it's important to include both, right, in the considerations of what should be done. And some of the addressing the professional activities might be easier to do now. Does anybody have any other questions? We're a small enough group, you can just unmute, or any of the members who are in the working group have anything they want to add. And I did see, so Patty also shared a UIUC, a website that they have on Gen AI. Thank you for sharing that. And we will include that. We'll include the URLs that are shared in the output. Christina.
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to share. I just wanted this week to an AI forum hosted at Notre Dame, and there is a Slack group as well. I'm putting a link to join in the chat. It was IT heavy, but and then like a few other administrators, but might be of interest to people here. So, you know, it's folks on different campuses who are trying to implement different AI models and services and figure out how to make sense of it and what are actual use cases that people are finding impact with or not. So this year's like in-person thing just ended. I think they're planning to do it again next year, but there's a Slack space and like a monthly call. So if anybody's interested in that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you for that. Because I bet there's lots of ideas people could get for presenting similar use cases to their campuses, right?
Yeah.
You said, is it mostly IT folks?
It's mostly
Okay.
IT. There were some people that were from like student affairs, teaching and learning. Sort of only a few of us sort of like research computing people, but I don't think I talked to anybody who was part of like an AI or data science institute, like in the leadership of that on campuses. So partly I think it's just starting out of an IT community and the the teams that, we're sort of, told to make something available or deal with this, but some folks from Internet 2 were there. So I think it would benefit both ways to have, ongoing folks from the Institute side and these use cases involved in those conversations too.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds definitely like a group we should connect to. For sure. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
No, Patty, again, just from Illinois. Just a quick comment to say I'm a research compliance person, not a data scientist really, but we have taught about generative AI as part of our responsible conduct of research series of talks, and I'm going to use that in my class that I'm going to teach next semester. So we see it as just it's kind of, to me, it's in the same ballpark as, how to do data management, how to do statistical analysis, how to use Gen AI. These are all sorts of, there are best practices for all these things that apply generally.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear too. I love this. We're getting a view into how all these different aspects, different groups on campus are thinking about this and making it available to their constituents. That's
I can send
fantastic.
anybody who wants my slides, I can send them to you. I'll put my email in the chat.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you. Anybody else want to share what they're doing, or? I don't see any other questions in the chat. So I guess thank you all for joining us. It was a nice quick one. And as I said, we will send you the slides so you can grab any of those URLs that were interesting to you. And please go ahead and reach out if you want to join this working group. Thank you to the workshop members who joined last minute in case there were questions I couldn't answer. Yeah, and hope you all have a great rest of your day.